Welcome to MSP Voice, a weekly show that brings you information from MSPs for MSPs. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome. This is episode 5 of MSP Voice. Today I am welcoming Michael Wayland from Byte-Werx Technologies out of Texas. Michael, great to have you here. Why don't you just give me a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Again, thank you for having me. Michael Wayland with Byte-Werx. We are a one-man MSP out in the west side of Houston. We've been around for about 5 years as a company. Really started in the MSP space about 3 years ago, so we're still fairly new. But once we transitioned to MSP space, we've had rapid growth, so it's one of the important business decisions I think that I've made as far as getting to where I want to go.
Okay. So what made you kind of get into managed services? What was the impetus, I guess, for you to break out on your own and do it?
Well, because I like to eat and pay landlords have rent and stuff like that. We actually started as we're planning on doing small business web design and web app development. I had a partner who lived out in Seattle, Washington. He does web app development, stuff like state government level medical websites, stuff like that on his day job, and he was wanting to break out. So I was coming into that as kind of like the sales side of it. We just didn't get a lot of traction. We were not doing it as much as we'd wanted to, barely able to survive at the time. And I had made jumped in 2 feet forward, quit my job and just went into it. So the need for rent and food and stuff like that necessitated me starting to take side jobs as doing IT work, fixing stuff here and there, and it ended up growing so much quicker than the other. Eventually, about 2 years ago, I ended up buying out my partner and just going full time into the MSP space.
Great. So you mentioned you quit your job. Did you have an IT career first before you did this?
At the time when I started this, I did not. Early in my career, I've started probably my first paid IT gig was like at age 15 when people would call me up and I'd make $20, $30 here or there. So I've always been around doing stuff like this and little web designs, freelance work here and there. The biggest IT gig I had was a kind of tier 1, 2 technician at a mortgage firm. I was basically a loan officer and their IT guy. They had about 20 people, but they knew I could do that, so I got a little bit of extra money doing that on the side.
Cool.
So I come at more as a business perspective than as like a technician or engineer that like really love what they did and thought they could do it more. I kind of came at the other way.
Yeah. I noticed when I was looking at your profile on your website that you have your MBA, which I don't know a lot of how many MSP owners have an MBA. So that's great.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where it started from. So before I started the MSP, my last job, hopefully the last job I ever have, I was actually a communications director for a local chamber of commerce.
Okay.
Shortly prior to that, I actually worked for Dish Network. On their technical side, I did a lot of breaking the new equipment. I would see some of the stuff that would come out 12, 18 months beforehand, and I would just put it through its paces, break it, did some business analysis. They wanted me to move out to their corporate office in Colorado, but I wanted to stay in the Houston area. So we transitioned that. I was doing, and all of that was happening while I was doing my MBA on nights and weekends. So I knew that I wanted to start a company. While I was at the chamber, one of the members heard that I was good at computers and offered me, hey, $100 a month as a retainer just for the privilege of giving me a phone call. And so that got my juices going. I'm like, oh, wait, this could be something here. And so without even realizing the MSP space existed, I kind of recreated the wheel of this kind of idea of monthly payment to kind of do that from this one thing. And I ended up with a couple of clients on a managed contract before I had even discovered ASCII or managed service, even heard the acronym or anything like that.
That's great. So looking back to last year, I know the Houston area, which is where you're at, was pretty badly hit by Hurricane Harvey. Did you or any of your customers, have any issues from that? I know the presentation at the ASCII event in Austin from the one MSP who talked, shared the pictures and everything. It was pretty devastating. Did that affect your customers?
It did. One of the things that I am proud of is that across all of my customers, we had a total downtime of only about 2 hours.
Wow.
And this is customers that had 3 feet, 4 feet of water in their office because of the backup disaster recovery systems that we had in place. It's one of those, you put it there, you hope you never use it, but you test it, and thankfully it worked as we went to. So anyone of our customers who wanted to continue to work, even if they were at home, we worked over the weekend to make sure that we could get them set up remotely, remote off-site movement. So everybody who wanted to work can continue work. Myself personally, we were trapped in our home we didn't get any flooding, but we were trapped. We couldn't leave the neighborhood for about 6 days because of the amount of water that we had. Like I said, one of my clients ended up with about 4 feet of water. They just bought and renovated, built out a brand new building not 6 months before that.
Oh, wow.
But we were able to virtualize their servers on site. They have a San Antonio and Austin branch, so we were able to keep them working off the main servers by virtualizing those, and just routed the phones over there, so they were able to continue working. And then I ended up getting some new business out of it because of people who thought that they had backup or didn't. So yeah, one of the clients we had was a CPA firm, and they had about 8 feet of water. It was up to their ceiling. It was almost to the second floor of their building. And it was there for about 3 weeks before it got drained enough where they could actually go in there. So their all their equipment, all their data, their files, every hard backup was underwater for nearly a month. They had been paying for a consumer cut rate. I've never even heard of it. Backup, offsite backup. Like I never heard. I don't even remember what it is right now. And so he spent a little bit trying to find somebody to get that back for him. Contacted me, and we couldn't get a hold of it. It's one of those that they don't have a phone number anywhere you can call. You can't look it up. Nothing we were doing to recover was pulling anything back up. It got to a point where I ended up having to track down their parent company's filing documents in the state of California so I could get a phone number to call them. And as often happens, both of the companies are in the same floor, the same building, to move over there. And the end result, after about 90 days of trying to get this back, because again, he's an accountant, we're in mid-January at this point. And the end result was basically, hey, we got bought out, and oops, I think we forgot to migrate this server that your data's on.
Oh, geez.
They didn't have it.
Yeah, so that's it talks about the importance of backups, right? It's
and testing.
And testing and making sure that you're using enterprise grade quality and not consumer grade quality in a lot of these things. And I think the other thing, and what was the importance of when I saw the presentation at ASCII, it kind of hits home, is when you have a disaster like Harvey, it doesn't affect one customer. It probably affects almost all of them. And as an MSP, you're probably thinking, okay, well, if customer A or B, I can get them back up online. But if all of a sudden you've got 25 customers that are now affected and they're offline, and you need to get them back online, it's something that you really kind of have to step back and think about to make sure, are you prepared for that level of disaster? Are your customers protected? Can you get them back online? And it sounds like you were pretty well set up, so everyone was back to work. So that's great.
Yeah, thankfully, again, like I said, it's something that you plan for, or hopefully you plan for if you're in the industry.
Yeah.
And you never want to test, but we got hardened by fire, and it seemed to work for us. So.
Yeah. So I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, so I'm not immune to the hurricanes, but we glanced a blow last year, so with Irma, so I was very, very happy about that.
Yeah.
So one of my questions is, how did you transition from break fix into managed services? But it really sounds like you just kind of stumbled upon managed services, from a contract perspective and those types of things. But you were doing some break fix when you were younger, but
so when we first got started, it was basically hand to mouth. Anything I could get, I was taking. So there was break fix, there was hourly work. I like to say I went through the entire IT business model history in about 18 months. Started as like break fix what I could get to time blocks to managed service, all in the span of like 18 months as I was like learning and growing. I was small enough so I could be really quick on my feet. But as I transitioned more and more to managed service, I lessened the hourly, and as of July 1st of last year, I basically, all of my clients, and went to them that were not on a managed service and said, starting September 1st, you cannot buy an hour of my time anymore. We're all managed, we're all contract, or I will help you transition to who you need to be, but this is going to be what our company is moving forward. During that, we only lost a single client. Most of them moved over. And truth be told, that was a client I priced such that they would hopefully move along. So,
sometimes it's not bad to fire your customers, you know.
Right. Well, I like to say I've never lost a customer that I hadn't fired, thankfully.
Yeah.
So we've moved primarily fully contract work at this point. The only time I will do hourly is kind of a get to know you emergency. So if somebody calls me up, their server's on fire, and I think that they would be a good fit, we'll go out there and we'll do hourly work for like the first get to know us kind of stuff, show them that we can do what we can do. But explain, and I will bring contracts at that meeting right then and there, explain what we do, and then push forward from there, letting them know that moving forward, we'd love to work with you, but it will be on a contract basis. We do.
Got it. So, with that in this managed service area, what kind of software do you use? Like PSA, RMM, all those types of things.
So right now we are Kaseya shop on both their PSA and the RMM tool, so the BMS and the VSA. We like the way that those kind of integrate together. For the general business, we use Byte-Werx for pulling our different quotes and for hardware quotes, QuickBooks Online for accounting, and one of the things that I use internally is so the Microsoft E3 license with really liking the way that recently OneDrive and SharePoint have been tightly integrated. And the Power BI gives me some really great business analytics straight from QuickBooks that are, in my opinion, a lot better than the reports I can actually pull and make it a lot more quick and visual, and actually make some of my own reports with kind of living spreadsheets that I've created with my contract. So at a glance, I can see how much revenue I have left to come for the year, based on the sold, how much revenue I have left in the life of my contracts. Just it updates once a month, but I can just glance at it and just kind of have a quick snapshot, which allows me to make some better decisions on like capital expenditures and stuff like that.
Great. Now, do you kind of have an evaluation process where you kind of go back and look to say, hey, am I using the best software? Is it time to change? Do you do that on any particular cycle, or do you just, hey, if it works, don't fix it?
Well, it's been so I've got through the years as we're just starting up. I've gone through a lot of different ones. I started with GFI Max back when it was still that. Got a little bit, wasn't sure about them whenever they were doing like their mergers and splits and what was going on there. So we tried the Managed Workplace by AVG at the time, and then we had a lot of issues with that. It ended up at SolarWinds Enable, at which point we liked SolarWinds Enable. It's a little bit more work to get going and some of the automation features, but overall we did enjoy the product. But then we ended up joining the 20. The 20, as famously known, is become a full Kaseya shop. So as we were integrating into that, we moved and transitioned all of our clients over to Kaseya, and at this point, all of our clients are over at Kaseya.
Okay, great. So, looking at your business and those types of things, do you do any advertising? Is it all word of mouth? How do you get new customers?
Sure, we do. I don't know if I call it advertising, but we do marketing. We have a marketing budget. I have approximately 10% of my annual revenue, even as a one-man shop, I put towards marketing. A large portion of that has to do with local networks, chambers of commerce, some of the most effective marketing that I have done has actually been to spend time at Chamber of Commerce events. A lot chambers are like so many things. You get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah.
You can't just pay your annual dues and go to one event a year or the annual banquet and expect to get anything, right? You have to show up. So I strategically will pick like one chamber a year. So we're a member of 3 right now. As we get established there, we moved on to the next one. But things that we do is we'll a lot of times come in at a higher level, which will sometimes just like open people's eyes like real quick, like, oh, where's this guy coming in at, near the top, which is usually a fairly low investment. So for like $1,500, you can get to the president's circle, for a year. But you get a lot of marketing on like everything that they put out for that entire year. Sometimes it gives you a better in. We like to do lunch and learns, which has actually been very successful for us. I have a 45-hour long presentation for cybersecurity and small businesses that I like to give out. It's always been very well received. Sometimes so well received that we've had to split it into 2 lunches back to back because we're so engaged in the conversation we couldn't get through everything, and that has led to quite a bit of phone calls, traffic, and then of course lots of referrals from my existing customers.
Yeah, I know cybersecurity is a hot topic these days, and especially for small businesses, because they hear so many different things. They don't not necessarily sure what to do, and so having someone come in and give them some training and some education on what to do, what to look out for is great. It's a great way to grow your business.
Yeah, I mean, we've found a lot of success for it. We're planning on continuing to do that. So
great. So what advice do you have for someone who might just be getting started into, IT services, whether it's break fix or managed services, any kind of major things that they should do or they should watch out for?
Well, some of the things that I would say early on, especially if you're trying to do like an all-you-can-eat style contract or something like that, is you need to understand why your service is actually a good business decision for the person you're trying to sell to. If you don't actually believe, because I've talked to some of these MSPs, like they don't truly believe that their business decision, that they wouldn't make the decision that they're trying to sell. So first off, you have to actually have something that you think is a good business decision for your clients. That if you don't think it's going to help them, you shouldn't sell it. And if you don't believe it, they'll know it. So going into that, I would say you need to be able to sell with a business mentality. You're talking to managers, you're talking to owners of business. They're going to be looking at this through a business eye. So if you're just getting started in business, you may have to develop that eye a little bit. But once you've been in it for a while, you'll understand things like cash flow and expenditures and different stuff like that. And same way you would evaluate a vendor coming to you, you want to turn that eye out. Like if I was getting this presentation, what questions would I ask? Like what would make me, so if you can't explain that concisely, your sales process will be more difficult than it needs to be. And most business owners, they don't really care about the technology of it. They don't want to hear about all the cool things that we care about. They just want to know, is it going to, like when Harvey comes in, can my people still work? They don't care how it happens. They just want to know it can happen. And so that's I would say number one is try to find a voice that would be more of a business voice than a tech voice.
Leave the jargon at the door.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times I see with like the one-man shops like myself is this kind of antsiness. They move around a lot to different vendors, like the newest shiny toy or whatever, and they jump around. That has like real cost to move from education, from the cost of the licenses, stuff like that. There's no perfect solution. So sometimes it's better to stay with your imperfect solution that you have now for maybe a little bit longer instead of necessarily jumping. So I'd say don't vendor hop as much as sometimes I see newer MSPs doing.
Definitely understand that. So, so what do you think is kind of the greatest part about being in managed services? What excites you the most about the whole model?
Well, for me, beyond being a kind of geek for tech, I'm also I love business models and business plans and stuff like that. And being able to see the way that so many different businesses work and how
Hmm.
they're put together, just kind of eye-opening. And just something as simple as I have a cemetery as a customer.
Wow.
Like just trying to, if you just stop and think about like, well, a cemetery is supposed to be here for 100 years, but they only have so much land. Like, how do they make money and keep all this? Like,
Hmm.
just the figuring out how and seeing opening my eyes to just different ways of business, and then helping those businesses to grow. And I truly do try to act as though I am a CIO or employee of the business. I want them to grow
Hmm.
because in so doing, I will continue to
Yeah.
grow. And so I like having this kind of variety of business and problem solving that I have with my mix of clients.
Yeah, I know I kind of understand what you mean because through my career I've worked for vendors
Mhm.
myself, and when you go out on a sales call and you meet all these different companies and you see all these different industries, and it's just like, wow, I never knew that this industry even existed or that there were companies that actually did this. It's like
Mhm.
it's kind of amazing when you think about all the companies, all the industries and everything that kind of go into, certain stuff. It's just it kind of blows your mind. And I understand what you mean about, even locally, if you're working with small customers, there's a lot of small businesses out there that serve certain niches that you may not even knew existed, or
Mhm.
that, it's just it's a constant education, I guess.
Yeah. And with that, sometimes you'll learn stuff from other industries that could work at this other desperate industry. And
Mhm.
because they're so far apart, they don't talk to you. Like they would have never have thought about that. So I
Yeah.
like trying to sometimes bridge the gap and like, hey, I just saw this with this. This seems like something that might work, and just like bringing it up and just seeing what seeing how it could work or not.
Yep. Cool. So that's part of the best thing. What's the worst thing about managed services?
Well, it's part. I guess one of the worst things about it is the expectations game.
Hmm.
If you are not on top of that, so whereas at its best, you are a part of a company and helping it grow and almost treated like another coworker, more than just a vendor.
Hmm.
Um, but on the opposite side of that coin is the fact that they sometimes will hold you to a higher standard than they will any other vendor,
Yeah.
whether fair or not. And just being able to navigate that and the issues that can come up with that. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes, customers aren't good customers, but we try, right?
well, even the best customers, if their expectations aren't set properly, can
Hmm.
uh, sometimes have grievances rightfully or wrongfully.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. So, community. So,
Yes.
in this idea of, managed services, I believe we already talked, you're a member of ASCII, but, do you consider yourself part of the MSP community? And if so, what kind of resources do you use to partake in that community?
Absolutely. I do consider myself part of the MSP community, and I do monitor a lot of different communities and forums, and I try to answer and give back ideas and stuff. I'm
Hmm.
fairly open book. I will be more than happy to take phone calls from other members of the community, answer them, tell them what worked for me, worked for not. I've had several hour-long conversations that started from an email or a forum group.
Yeah.
The primary ones that I participate in is the ASCII email forums, the Reddit MSP, and then
Hmm.
the 20 groups
Okay.
forums.
So,
I
yeah.
am, yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I am a member of Robin Robbins group, but I don't. That would probably be one of the ones I don't participate as much in right
Okay.
now. Just so much time in the day.
Yeah. So you mentioned the 20. Can you maybe help, for those like of us that may not have heard of the 20 or not maybe understand what the 20 is, just give a brief explanation of what that community is and what it's like?
Sure. 20 seems to be some like the one of the biggest mysteries in the MSP world right now.
I've read some posts on Reddit about it, so yeah.
Right. So more or less, the 20 I like to describe as kind of like a reverse co-op. What it is a group of like-minded MSPs like myself who've kind of come together. We're trying to provide the top 20% of service and IT class that we can in the industry.
Okay.
Part of that has to be with a kind of unification of our back-end services like the Kaseya,
Okay.
VSA, BMS. And the reason that is important is because we use a centralized help desk and knock service for like the low-level calls. So we have documentation, guideline, basic stuff that each member is voluntarily following.
Okay.
It's not like we're giving up ownership or anything like that. We're all fully owned our stuff. We're just working together towards an end goal of not having to create 100 different help desks at every one of our offices. Let's all chip in a couple bucks together and just make one really good, really big one that we're all participating in and making better.
Okay.
And with that, it allows us, or me as like a one-man shop, to go after 150, 250 employee companies and be able to provide them the same level of service that a like 10 or 15 employee MSP is, because I've got a 30-man help desk and 10-man knock working 24/7. So it allows me to scale a lot easier and be able to do things that I could have never done on my own and provide the same level of service that I would provide if I was doing it myself.
Okay.
So it's been very helpful for me in that regard. I would consider it one of the best business decisions I've ever made.
Cool. So yeah, like I said, it's just kind of there does seem to be some mystery around it for whatever reason, but it sounds like a great idea. In terms of let's pool our resources together to make to lift each other. We can all lift each other up together instead of just trying to go it alone. So I really like the idea of that. It's great. And
for example, like I was telling you, one of my clients has a branch here in Houston as their headquarters, but they also have a branch in San Antonio and Austin. Well, there's a 20 member out in Austin that works with me. So if there needs boots on the ground, we can share that. And there's so many in the Houston, San Antonio ecosystem of companies with branches in those two cities that we can work together. If I sell a company here in Houston that has a San Antonio branch, he gets that piece of the contract. Okay. If he sells something there, and so we're sharing with each other, and we all know that the quality is going to be there, that we're using the same help desk and documentation, that kind of stuff. So we can easily do that kind of stuff and work together and be more collaborative and go after bigger fish than we would by ourselves.
Wow, that's great. So thanks for the quick education on the 20. I really appreciate it. I'm sure some of our listeners will appreciate it as well.
No problem.
So with that, we are now to our rapid fire round.
Okay.
Don't worry, it's not too personal, but it's just a couple of it's 5 questions. So just answer quick, and then we'll move on to the next, and maybe we can talk about some of the answers afterwards. So, are you ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Apple or Android?
Android.
Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Windows.
Amazon, Azure, or something else?
Azure.
Okay. Local backups or cloud, or both?
Both.
And then finally, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
Ooh. Vendor cold calls. Worst case, I could throw the printer away and just buy them a new one.
Yeah, vendor cold calls seem to be winning out on that one for most folks. So, and trust me, coming from the vendor world and being in IT before that, I know how annoying it is. Even being a vendor now, we still get cold calls from everybody that wants to sell us something or do their service. So, I definitely understand how frustrating it can be.
I understand. I also understand everybody's got a job to do.
Yes. Yep. So I try not to be too rude. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the main portion. Anything in here at the end that you want to say, kind of wrap things up, impart us some knowledge?
Sure. I guess for anybody who's looking at potentially going out on their own to start in their journey as an MSP or business owner, I would recommend doing it, but to make sure that you're going in with your eyes open, do some planning. You shouldn't make a business decision based on the fact that you don't like what your current job is doing.
But I can do it better by myself.
You can. Just if you don't come from a business world, I would say just make sure you spend some time on nights and weekends looking at stuff like cash. What is cash flow? What is overhead, fixed costs? That kind of just some basic business knowledge will help you immensely and put you head and shoulders above some of the other startups that may not necessarily know that.
Yeah, maybe even some business classes at the local community college. You know, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So
it probably couldn't hurt.
Yep, great. So Michael, thank you so much for being on this episode of MSP Voice, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. It was fun.
All right. Bye.